This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm E.J. Iannelli, and my guest in the Roquehart Media Studio today is Shelly Wynecoop, the Director of Grant Making at Spokane Arts. So welcome, Shelly.
Thank you, E.J. Nice to be here.
And you're coming in here now because you're coming off the grant round for SAGA, the Q1 grant round for Spokane Arts Grant Awards, no?
Yeah, the public-facing part of that in terms of announcing our winners and letting other people know to reapply, that part has closed, and now I am into getting everybody feedback out, just letting them know how they did and what they can do to improve their applications if they want to come back again.
Yeah, and that's probably a good place to start and talk about the SAGA process, because a key element of SAGA is getting artists familiar with the grant writing or grant application process, and then that's why feedback is such an important tool in all that. So yeah, let's run through the steps of SAGA for those who aren't familiar with it.
Right on. So we will start with someone hears about the program, whether it is advertising or I step into a classroom and talk to a set of students, or do a grant seminar for people who are interested in what the program is or does on a community basis. And I will meet with people who want to put the application in. They come at it from every conceivable level. Everything from professional grant writers to people who are terrified of grant writing and do not believe this is for them. Those are my favorites, because they will come into a conversation with me. They'll get excited about what they're doing. We will focus it. We will talk about the application piece by piece and get them in the running for it. We have had people funded the first time they have put in with projects like this. So that process of just back and forth with people on their applications at whatever level they need it, then they put in for the deadline. We have 3 deadlines every year. Let's see, you can ask for up to $10,000 for the application, and then once you've got your application in, I will vet it for completeness and eligibility. And if I can sneak somebody in, if they're missing a document or something, I will do that at the last minute if it's warranted. And then once everybody's in a neat package, I will send them on to panel. The panel has about 6 weeks to review the applications, where they give numeric scores and verbal feedback. Then I take all of those scores, it looks like the Matrix when you pull the data out of the system, and turn that into something that is legible. Well, you've been a panelist, so you've seen the spreadsheets that come out of that. And then we just, as a group, talk about each of the applications that fell above a raw score of about 75%. Now, I don't take part in any of the decision making. I'm simply an administrator to the process. So I facilitate the panel, I facilitate the applicants, and the public in its awareness of the program. But the panel will go through and score. I will tally those scores, put them in front of the panel. We would talk about those top applications, and then the panel has the opportunity to bubble up applications that maybe did not do as well in the grant writing piece. Mm-hmm. So those initial scores are just a starting point. That's where we kind of figure out who we should be talking about. And then panelists will pop up applications with those lower scores that have really strong aesthetics, really strong community outreach, and they're in the running for funding just like anybody else. Then we fight it out. We've got 1/3 of our funding every year to allocate for each of the 3 rounds, and we start putting things up on the board, talking about full and partial funding. I always advocate for full funding where we can.
Yeah, and so it's this numerical process where things are ranked and things are scored, and then it moves into this panel process where a more human element or human assessment enters the picture. But I think one question that might be on the mind of a prospective grantee is what is the panel comprised of? Who sits on the panel? Because it's easy to imagine these kind of mysterious hooded figures, but these are people who are usually picked from the community.
Yes, it's a community-based panel, which is one of the strengths of SAGA. It is not a permanently seated panel. It changes every calendar year, and it is comprised of 1 member of the Spokane Arts Board, 1 member of the Spokane Arts Commission, and then 4 people from the community. And they can vary everything from undergraduate students in the arts to professional working artists to professional arts administrators, professional arts business people, philanthropists who focus on the arts. It's a huge arts ecosystem, and we draw liberally from it.
Yeah, and as part of my panel experience, and I would assume that it's similar for other folks who have sat on panels since and before, is that when you talk about these applications kind of bubbling up, there are applications that maybe don't have those raw scores that, they certainly meet a certain threshold, but then they fall just above that. But you realize that there's some merit in that. And I think it must be fun and enlightening to be a part of the panel process and to watch these discussions unfold and see what the panel is prioritizing and what is kind of bubbling up.
Yeah, so in addition to the types of things that are not captured by those initial raw scores, we have a sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. We have the desire for the panel to not fund nothing but paper-making projects. We have a lot of different considerations come into those discussions. Also, if there's a particular panelist with expertise on something, that's where that expertise can come out and that conversation can develop. But also, every panel every year has its own flavor, and that's one of the things that's lovely about running a community panel process, is that that flavor changes drastically every year. So you don't just always get the same types of things funded. We'll get very folksy panels in that will fund things that just reach a lot of people. We will get panels in that are very interested in about business sustainability and the numbers and the bottom line. We'll get panels that are interested in high art, but it changes every year, yeah. And that is the strength of it.
And I remember when SAGA was first getting off the ground, when it was just a concept, and then in those early days of implementation. How has it devolved, or how has it evolved in those 8-9 years?
This will be its 9th year of grant making. So we've just completed the first round of SAGA's 9th year of grant making. And by the way, we have also just passed the $1 million mark to the community.
Oh, wow.
So right now we're sitting after the third round at $1,044,416.
Oh, wow. And I mean, that's a big milestone.
It is a big milestone. It is, especially because that is comprised of nearly 200 projects throughout the region, not just Spokane, but a little bit further out as well. But I'm sorry, what was your original question? Oh, how it's evolved.
Yeah, how it's evolved, and maybe how it's kind of solidified and changed in different ways, yeah.
Well, the first year of SAGA, Jennifer Knickerbocker was the woman behind a lot of the initial strokes of what SAGA was going to look like, and the community conversations that developed the initial program. When I came in, there were a couple things that were on my short list for grant making in the arts, because I have myself done a lot of grant writing from the art side. And I wanted, selfishly to address my frustrations with arts grant making. And one of those was a lack of full funding. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes when you come in as a grant writer, you're going to underestimate what it is it's going to take to do what you want to do. Artists are notorious for not paying themselves or paying themselves enough. And a lot of people believe that they're going to be more competitive in the grant writing space if they undercut the bottom line on their project. Mm-hmm. If it looks like they can do it for cheaper.
Yeah.
So you take all of that, and then let's say you win the grant and you get only partial funding. Now you're in the position where you actually can't do the project, at least not as stated. Mm-hmm. So I push a lot for full funding where we can with SAGA. We're also balancing that with trying to fund as many projects as we can reasonably. That was one thing, full funding. The other is that feedback model. Now there was a rubric for feedback when I first came in, but I've really doubled down on that to try and present that information both visually and verbally, and try to provide as much context as I can for our grant writers about how to successfully approach any given panel that's seated that year.
So you mentioned these milestones. You've passed the $1 million mark. Actually, before I ask that question, it might be helpful to emphasize where this money comes from. So where does this pot of funding originate?
So SAGA is fully funded by 16.5% of the City of Spokane's admissions tax income. And admissions tax is that couple cents that you pay on a ticket if you go to a hockey game, if you go to a movie, if you go to any kind of event that is ticket bearing. There's a little tax on that the city collects, and it goes into the coffers. SAGA takes 16.5% of that pot to do all of the grant making.
So you encourage people to go out and attend concerts and and see sporting events, because that money is then, or a portion of that money is then being channeled back into funding the arts.
Yes, and that's a lovely moment of kind of economic education as well, right? If you feed the pot gets bigger, not just for the 16.5%, but for everyone else who's benefiting from that pot, which I don't actually know, like who gets the rest of that admissions tax income, but everyone benefits.
So you've passed these milestones. We passed the $1 million mark in terms of overall funding, and then you funded, you said 200 odd projects in that time. So is SAGA better known within the community, or are you still coming across artists and other folks who say, SAGA what now?
Well, there are a few ways to answer that. One is that we are seeing quite an influx of people into the Spokane area, and people who are very proactive, who want to know what their resources are. And so I hear from people almost every week coming in from all over the nation, trying to connect with arts resources and figure out what the ecosystem is here. So there's that. The other is that, of course, we always have a new crop of students coming out who are learning how to do development and wanting to get real about being artists and being able to pay their bills. So that is a crop that I am continuously hearing from as well. But yes, there are established artists, people out there. Every once in a while, I do hear from someone who says, wait, what? There's arts grant making going on in Spokane? I have to know about this.
And what about members of the public? Does SAGA carry any cachet with folks outside art circles?
One of the things that I have noticed, and I encourage with all of our new grantees, is that if you do get an award from SAGA, you need to leverage that. Because unlike a lot of grant makers, they like to be, not just grant makers, but people who will give sponsorships and any kind of money toward events. They like to be that capstone funder. So they like to kind of be the hero, throwing a few $100s in to get you over your mark. We like to be at the bottom. We like to be the first people in to vet what you're doing, to say this is great and interesting and people should know about you. So once you get that stamp, then you can take that, sometimes literally to the bank, and try and get those sponsorships, and you get a lot of PR that comes with that. The things like this are case in point. We love that. The profile of people who get those awards is really raised, and their leveraging capacity because of that is raised.
And with 200 projects already funded, then there's probably a number to choose from. But can you think of some projects that have been realized where you'd like to say to people, hey, did you know that we provided the seed funding for this, or we provided the initial funding for this thing that you happen to be experiencing or looking at now?
Well, there are some of our projects naturally that do end up getting a lot of eyes on them over a long period of time, that people do tend to be very aware of in the community. So I could call out the Emerson Garfield marker, Sun Shines Through. People pass by that, going both north and south every day. So that's high on people's radar. The Spokane Cookbook is another one that people tend to know very readily, and may not necessarily be aware that that's a SAGA award. But yes, we do have those very high-profile types of things. I think the things that surprise people more are the things that feel more kind of embedded in the community, and more specific to to specific demographics or something of that nature, that are less splashy.
Can you give me a for instance?
We had for instance a Muslim women's art group,
right?
funded. And their work was not about being big and splashy. It was about being in community. It was not about having their pictures splashed everywhere, because naturally that is not something that happens for that community. It was about community building. It was about expression. It was about sharing. So those types of things are, I think, a big part of the heart of what SAGA does too.
Yeah, in a similar vein too, there was one that took place. It was, even though it was in Riverfront Park, and maybe was a little more public facing than most, it still wasn't necessarily splashy. That was the Friends of Mofra, which had a really interesting backstory that tied into Spokane, and
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, it was really phenomenal.
Yeah, Friends of Mofra, M-M-O-F-R-A. Mofra means children. In the African language, I wouldn't want to say, I don't remember what the name of the African language is, but in any case, that was a lovely piece. It was banners with photography and poetry of children playing, a cross-cultural type of thing that fit beautifully in that, what is that, what's the name of that playground over there?
The play structure, the Ice Age
That's
play
it.
structure,
yeah. But it was just a beautiful thing, and we're still trying to find places for that. So, should anyone like to see those banners out and about a little bit more, we would love that too.
Cool. And so you've got all these projects under your belt, but you've got a current crop that we mentioned all the way at the outset. You've got this current crop of 7 grant recipients.
New 8 ones.
8.
8
Yeah,
new
my
ones.
apologies. Yeah, and math isn't my strong suit. So you've got 8 grant recipients. Can we go through and maybe profile some of this current crop so folks know what to look for?
Yeah, just very briefly. Now, I do want to say that every individual, organization, business, collective that has ever been funded by SAGA, there are these blurbs and a little bit about their story and links to their websites and these kinds of things on SpokaneArts.org. But this round, we granted 8 new grantees for a total of $55,000. In 2025, we're going to be granting a total of $160,000, which is the highest amount that we've ever been able to grant in a year.
Oh, wow.
So thankfully, we have managed to come out of the COVID years and are on our way back up again. So this round, we funded a group called Live from Somewhere, and they're a Spokane-based concert film series showcase, and they do these high energy, beautifully shot music videos, if you can really, I mean, they're just lovely. So definitely check them out.
And I think that's going to be one, many people that I encounter have already heard of Live from Somewhere. So that might be one of the higher profile ones, and certainly more visible.
Yeah, probably so. They have a lot of moving parts. A lot of people are involved in those productions. So just by dint of that, But yes, they have quite a footprint. Another grantee is the Refugee and Immigrant Connections Spokane. We're going to be helping sponsor their World Refugee Day, and that's going to be Saturday, June 14th, 2025. And that was something that this panel felt pretty strongly about, given the political climate that we're up against right now, is that we want to reaffirm our belief that the arts and culture and cultural arts are a story for everyone in Spokane.
Yeah. And then I also see that Spokane Folklore Society is on there, and Spokane Folklore Society is a long-standing organization, so they're not new by any means, but they're not without funding needs. And so is it one of the grant awards going to fund the Fall Folk Festival?
Yes, it's the Fall Folk Festival in particular, which is going to be November 8th and 9th this year at Spokane Community College in the Lair Auditorium, which is usually where they hold it. And the SAGA support is going to be taking care of their space this year.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, nice, neat package. Another grantee this year was an individual artist. Her name was Heather Ann Woods. And this, again, is another type of grant that I really love to see us support. Because one of the rarer opportunities in arts granting is for artists to find support for their lived lives. Mm-hmm. So in the past, we have supported childcare for novelists so they could just write. These types of things are near and dear to my heart. So I was delighted to see Heather Ann get some support because she had been pushed out of her home studio due to family issues, and she had her first solo show coming up in September. She was desperate for space to paint. And she'd been getting some concessions from, people around her trying to give her a hand, but it was piecemeal. She needed some really concerted time to do her work. So
Yeah, and her upcoming exhibitions, that's Grounded?
yeah, it's called Grounded, and it's going to be in September at the gallery at Entropy.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So yeah, it's not just artists, but also venues and art spaces that are kind of benefiting from this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in terms of eligibility for SAGA, this is one of the things, a grant writing thing. Everybody coming in and putting an application in wants to make sure that they're zeroing everything out, that I'm not making money on this, I am just meeting my needs. We would love everyone to become rich artists in Spokane. We would love arts businesses to go through the ceiling. I mean, we want everyone to be able to eat, enjoy, thrive. So we don't need to see that everything that's coming in is going out as well. And so for businesses in particular, that's important.
Oh, cool. And then I saw too that Rachel Bade McMurphy, and we were actually talking about this before we started recording. And I said, oh, Rachel Bade McMurphy is one of those figures that, I mean, she's so involved in the community. And Imagine Jazz is another one of those organizations that, I mean, they've brought so many fantastic jazz musicians to the Spokane area already.
Yes.
So it's good to see her getting some funding. I think she was a recipient back when I was a panelist for, was it Jeremy Pelt? I think she was bringing, Jeremy Pelt's a world-class trumpeter, and so she was bringing him to the area. And so I don't know if it funded that necessarily, but this round, it's the Imagine Jazz Festival kickoff that's getting funded.
Yeah, and one of the things that Rachel and Imagine Jazz are really good at is bringing the community into the music space, teaching kids, doing master classes, getting that expertise out of the shell. So one of the things that we do get a lot of requests for is bringing big names into Spokane to do a performance or something of that nature. But they come in, they take the check, and they leave. We like to see them stay. We like to see them visit schools. We like to see them have master classes and artist talks and really wring as much out of them as we can while they're here. So that's something that Rachel is really good at. She uses, there's no piece that goes unused when someone comes in on her dime. So we're happy to support her again this year.
And then, already we've kind of spanned the gamut. We've got visual art, we've got music, and not just one type of music. There's folk music and jazz music. And then
and
there's
Live from Somewhere.
Yeah, and Live from Somewhere, which is maybe in a poppier vein. And then there's Friends of the Bluff, and this is a whole festival.
Yeah, and this is a relatively new festival. I mean, I guess it's their 5th year now, so I don't know if I can say that anymore, but it feels new to me. Yeah. It's activating a space which has it's been under threat for development and these types of things for many years. So this is a way for the community to take that beautiful bluff space where you overlook the Latah Valley back, activate that, bring the kids in, make it a family-friendly space, introduce the arts, and give artists a chance to work in front of people. I think that gets people really excited when they watch something come onto a canvas. It's kind of that Bob Ross moment. It's like, you can do this too. It kind of opens that door for possibility for people, especially with kids, I think. Yeah.
And then I saw a TEAM grant, TEAM. Is that an acronym for something?
Yeah, I don't remember what the acronym is. I don't know if they ever told me what it was. But it's basically a team that got together from the grant school to try and raise some funds so that they could do this mural project with their students.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it's an activation type of thing, that school pride, which is so important for kids' well-being and self-esteem and their engagement in the school, feeling of place. So they did a beautiful job with this. They were one of the things that I always encourage schools to do when they come in wanting to do a murals project with their kids is to think really hard about the art curricular aspect of it. Mm-hmm. What are you actually teaching the kids? How can you tell us what it is that they're taking away from this? Not just in terms of those large issues with respect to self-esteem, but how about composition and color? Mm-hmm. How about those kinds of curricular things that the arts are just getting leached out of our curriculum? How are you putting that back in with this project? And so that's something that they really embraced.
Yeah, and I realize now that it's at Grant Elementary, and so I had put the emphasis on team, but
Yes,
it's actually
yes.
Team Grant.
Yeah, I
not
know, and
Teen
Grant.
Grant. Yeah.
It sounds like a grant writing type of thing, but it's Grant School.
And then there's a Glow Through Art and Music, and that's the Glow Children Early Learning Center. And were they a prior recipient of a SAGA grant?
Yes, a few years ago, and that's something that it's worth mentioning. You can come back and request SAGA funds more than 1 year in a row. Now, it wasn't last year that they were funded, it was a couple years back. When you have been awarded from us twice, 2 calendar years in a row, that we ask that you lay off for a third year.
Mm-hmm.
So that is just kind of the balance that we have reached, so that we're not blown away by very strong grant writers, which is something that we try to mitigate anyway by looking at individual artist types of skills.
Right.
All right.
And so, what is the Glow Through Art and Music? What is that actually going to look like?
So they wanted to underwrite 2 separate projects. One which was going to be taught by Chrysalis Gallery.
Oh, okay.
For the visual arts for their kids, and the other was it is Music Together again. Yes, the Music Together program led by Nicole Hicks Wedge. So they've got both music and visual arts going in as curriculum for their kids again.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're just coming off this and you're offering feedback to those who were not fortunate enough to be funded.
I get requests for feedback also from those who were funded, which
interesting. Okay.
very much encourage, because the development cycle is it's ongoing. We're not the only program that people are applying to, so they want to know, even if they did get funded, was there something that maybe didn't sit right, or maybe rose questions, whatever it might be. So it's always a good practice to know what your panels are thinking. And that is an unusual piece of SAGA's support as well, because we provide that. We let you know word for word what the panelists said about your application.
Yeah, and if we're able to generalize, what are some deficiencies that you see that may be recurring that artists, who might be listening to this, could then address preemptively?
I would say there are 2 kinds of deficiencies. One are the deficiencies that the panel notices, and the other are the deficiencies that the panel does not notice. So they're missed opportunities.
I see.
Okay.
I see.
So the panels will pick up on unclear budgets, a lack of timelines, poor letters of support. These are all kinds of things that I will work with people. I'll work with anybody who wants to talk with me about, how you should approach each of the questions on the application. But the opportunities, I think, might be more interesting. People have the opportunity, for instance, to curate a show when they're putting in artistic samples. A lot of people default to this idea of kind of the museum label approach, where they just put an image and maybe a little bit about the piece, but nothing about the fact that it was in 10 shows in the last 5 years, or that it's in a collection, or that it got amazing press. Right. All of these things are opportunities. One of the biggest mistakes I see artists make is just throwing a panel at their website. That is handing the evidence over to the prosecution. They will find your broken links. They will find your fan fiction from 20 years ago that you forgot was on there. You never want to do that. You always want to put a panel's eyes on one image at a time and tell them why they're looking at what they're looking at.
And so those are the things that seem to come up more frequently than others.
Yeah, I would say so. One of the things that I expected to see when I came in, but I have not seen that much, is people tending to philosophize about art and try to justify why doing an art project matters at all. I have not seen people make that mistake.
Well, that's kind of encouraging then, and maybe they know because they're speaking to maybe a sympathetic panel.
Indeed.
Because I think, there is a perception and not one that's unjustified, but a perception that we have to justify the raison d'etre of art, that we always have to make the case for it. And art for art's sake is a frivolous thing.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's encouraging that folks feel that they don't have to philosophize or make, high-blown claims about what their project is going to accomplish because they don't feel the need or compelled to make that justification.
Well, now if they just pay themselves. Because that's the biggest stick I carry when I'm talking to artists, and someone will bring an application that is, they feel most of the way done for us to review. And nowhere in it is pay for their time and expertise. And they feel that makes them more competitive, which it does not, because this is a grant for professional artists, which means that you make a living off of your art. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about how artists try to not pay themselves. And the takeaway from this, and I think the thing that artists are able to hear from me, they're not able to hear from me, you have value, your work has value. But what they are able to hear from me is that the people working next to you have value. And when you do not put a price on your work, you're bringing down the opportunity for everyone else to put a price on theirs. So I think I think the fact that we're all on the ship together strikes home for people.
Yeah, and I think that remuneration is important, and I think it's certainly kind of a recurring theme in conversations that we've already had in this room. You know, whoever happens to be sitting on that side of the table, we invariably come to the creative economy, and we come to the value of art for the wider economy, but also the value that artists, as you mentioned, need to place on their work and on themselves. And that's tough to do given the current zeitgeist. And again, that seems to be another recurring theme where we talk about, especially as funding seems to be pulled from every possible corner, it devalues art, it devalues whatever that funding might have been directed towards previously. So do you see a time in the very near future where SAGA is going to increase in importance and SAGA might be that lifeline that artists need? Or do you try not to think about that? As
a community funder, we fund historically about 20% of the applications that we see, just based on our limited resources. That is a pretty normal figure for community funders across the board, whether it's arts or education, healthcare, it really doesn't matter. For community funders, you're stuck at about 20%. Unless we see a real cultural shift, these cultures do exist out there. There are cultures in this world that do pay artists and do value artists and seek them out. The United States has not been one of those cultures for a very long time. It's not a new thing. It's worse now. But it has been a difficult country to be an artist in for a very long time.
Yeah, and I mean, during the New Deal, the U.S. was a major funder of art. I mean, it really is a shining light or shining example of what the U.S. is capable of. And you think of all the works. I mean, there was Art USA that ran at the Junt. And, the work that was generated during that time was absolutely marvelous.
And monumental work and work that we still enjoy today.
So are there any positive takeaways? Do you feel as though the fact that SAGA has increased its profile and has funded all these projects, has it got Spokane as a whole to maybe take art a little more seriously, or place a little more value on the creative economy, or place a little more value on the artists?
One of the things that I was delighted to hear, and I hear this occasionally, it was not something I ever would have expected, but from quite a number of people who haven't been funded, who have been consistent in putting in applications, we will talk about what their best approach to the program might be, projects they might have in their back pocket that might be a better fit for us. And I will hear time and again, it just gives me hope there's even something to apply for. That there is someone looking at what I'm doing, that I am getting feedback, that I have the opportunity to engage this process of like working on development, and I'll work with people about, you know, who other funders might be that would be a better fit for them, or if a corporate approach might not be better for them, these kinds of things as well. So, I mean, that has always been kind of an interesting shining spot in the existence of SAGA per se. I would say overall, SAGA is one of the most democratic uses of government funds I have been personally involved in. It's a community-based decision process. It is, we provide so much support for our applicants at whatever level they come in with, coming and going with the SAGA program. And that raises the bar for people, you know, who've gone on to get artist trust grants and other types of things within the state of Washington. Some people have even been awarded nationally with materials that they've developed in the SAGA program. So that is always a positive pipeline. But generally speaking, in terms of finances, we've watched the steady rise. Now we're going to see, you know, what's going to happen economically here over the next few years. But we managed to make it through COVID, and those coffers from admissions tax have, without any major disruption, continued to rise. So our ability to grant has continued to rise. So, I mean, the future is unwritten, but our job is to get as much of that money directly in the pockets of artists as we can.
Yeah, and ideally, the more vibrant the arts and entertainment scene, the more vibrant it becomes through that funding mechanism.
Yeah, it's one of those rare those rare positive vortices in the world, right? Let's keep that going. Yeah, go see a movie and you're actually supporting arts other than, you know, things that were made outside of Spokane. You're actually supporting local artists and local businesses.
And in practical terms, just in case anybody is listening and saying, hey, this sounds like a fantastic opportunity, what are the next deadlines for 2025?
So the next deadline, the deadlines every year are February 1, June 1, and October 1 every year. And we take in applications digitally, so our portals open 1 month between each of those deadlines, but the application form itself is available year-round, so you can start work on it at any time, and I am available year-round to help people at whatever level you're coming in at.
And you say we. Who else is assisting you on this? Because you have been the primary driver of SAGA for quite a while now, in addition to doing a lot of the ARPA coordination and just really everything to do with grant making at Spokane Arts.
Yeah, it's the royal we. I think that, yeah. After 5 years, maybe the royal we applies.
Or you're doing the work of multiple people, so why not use the word we?
Although I will say I have had some wonderful interns who have just been a lifesaver. You know, people, recent graduates from Whitworth and Gonzaga and Eastern, our local universities, the community colleges. We've got some wonderful talent coming up in the world, and to show them a little corner of, I think, truly my insanity, you know, and helping, you know, learning how to herd chickens. It's a good experience.
Well, I'm looking forward to speaking with future SAGA grant recipients and then bringing them in and sitting down and talking to them about what we're going to see through the SAGA funding. But before we close, we have a series of lightning round questions.
Oh no!
Yeah. So this is
I'm
impromptu
terrible
stuff.
At trivia.
Well, these are a little more open-ended. Although this first question is an either or. So, early riser or night owl?
Oh, night owl, big time.
Okay. I wasn't sure where you were going to land on that. I wasn't sure if you were going to be someone who kind of one of these 3 a.m. wake up people, but you're going to bed at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's about right.
The cheekiest or the most memorable answer you've ever seen on a grant application?
Oh. You know, it wasn't a specific answer to a specific question, but it was just that the personality really shone through, and the panel ate it up. And that was Ryan Abrahamson putting an application through for his film Red Road, a Native American filmmaker here and his crew.
And what about it? What about his personality stood out?
Well, so many people, when they're putting a grant forward, want to put on that formal. They put on a suit and tie before they start writing, and he did not. And it was such, he pulled it off. Let's put it that way.
Refreshingly personable and casual.
Just real. It was really nice to read.
Something that you would like to see more of in the local art scene?
Performance art, for sure.
And can you define that?
Interacting with the public in interesting ways. Passers-by finding themselves in interactions that they didn't expect. Inculcating in the general public a broader idea of what the arts can be.
Right.
That's something that I think is missing as an ecosystem here. I don't see enough of it. I want more of that.
So more performance art, and not necessarily interactive art, but performance art.
Well, just sitting in a cage with the coyote kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Let's really bring out the weird. Let's start, spreading our wings a little bit.
So speaking of getting weird, let's get astrological. What is your star sign?
I'm a Taurus.
Are you? Okay. Do you put any stock in astrology?
I'll tell you a story. I'm kind of wonky. I do a lot of figure number crunching kinds of things, and I come from a pretty heavy statistical background in grad school and these kinds of things. And I was living in New York and went to one of my favorite bars once, and it happened to be a big group of people there, and a friend of a friend came up and made some comment about astrological signs, and I snort laughed. And just when she heard me, and she's like, I don't know any of you around this table. There were 13 of us. And she said, I can tell every one of you, having stood here for 1 minute, what your signs are, and I'm like, I want to see this.
What an interesting party trick, huh?
I want to see this. This is actually interesting. And so she did, and she got every one of us right.
And she ID'd you, huh?
So I changed my mind that day. Okay. There's something to it.
And then finally, the best thing that you've experienced recently, and I mean that in terms of like a play or a concert or visual art, an exhibition.
Oh boy. Olivia Brownlee at Hamilton Studios.
Was she performing with anyone in particular? Because she's involved with like 16 different groups.
Indeed. No, it was just her and her guitar and a little table with a flower in a vase. And the venue and the intimacy suited her style and the kinds of things that she talks about in her songs so beautifully. It was so elevating, and it was transcendent.
And did she perform any of her any of the songs from Spokane? When she did "This Is Where You," she organized "This Is Where You Live," which might have been was that a SAGA grant as well?
No, it was not.
Okay,
it was not. But yes, one of them was. At least one of them was. Maybe something else snuck in there that I didn't recognize, but.
Oh, fantastic. And this is probably a topic for another day, or a topic for Don Hamilton himself, but the way Hamilton Studio has really come into its own and established itself as a really ecumenical arts venue has been really encouraging to see.
Well, I was talking to Don about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, with his crew, and he said, "Yeah, we're really just embracing Spokane and what Spokane has to offer." And I said, "But Spokane embraced you back."
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece of it that is missing in a lot of these machinations that people have going out in the world and going to do things. It's like, what's the reception?
Yeah.
And Don has, what he's doing has been welcomed with open arms, and it's really clear.
And venues have been in relatively short supply. Certainly in my time in Spokane, venues have always kind of had a question mark over them, and they go through boom and bust periods. And so the fact that SAGA might be funding these artists and then they're in need of a venue now, it's nice to know that someplace like Hamilton Studio and hopefully other venues will spring up and offer them that.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I believe you mentioned earlier, but is so lovely about these grants is that you're never just feeding an artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's an entire ecosystem around them, and it is venues, and it is arts businesses, and it is other artists that it's the tendrils really spread out quite a lot.
Yeah, that 16.5% goes a long way.
It goes a long way that way, and then it goes a long way in the leveraging as well. Yeah, so it's small but mighty.
An apt phrasing for Spokane Arts as a whole as well.
Oh, COVID has been quite the run. It's we do count our blessings because so many people lost their jobs, and we had more work than we could handle because we were doing that support work and people were so desperately in need of it. But I am hoping that we are looking forward to some more stable days. We will see.
Yeah. On that note, thank you so much for coming in. It's hugely appreciated.
It's my pleasure.